Dad told me. You're useless, unlike your brother. I didn't argue. I packed my bags, took a deep breath, and left. A year later, they begged me to come home after they saw. When he said it, it didn't even sting the way you'd think it would. My father, standing there in the living room, his face flushed red with disappointment, his voice sharp enough to split me down the middle. You're useless, he said, barely looking at me. Unlike your brother. I didn't fight back. I didn't cry or plead or argue. God knows I'd wasted enough years doing that already. Instead, I walked upstairs, one step at a time, the hardwood creaking under my weight like it might protest for me. In my room, the same room I'd grown up in, walls still lined with posters from a life that never really felt mine, I grabbed my old duffel bag and started packing. A few clothes. My worn-out laptop. A couple of books. It wasn't much, but it was all mine. The house was quiet except for the low murmur of the TV downstairs. My brother Derek, probably still basking in the afterglow of another meaningless trophy, another accolade tossed at his feet like a bouquet. Mom would be sitting silently, letting it all happen, like she always did. As I zipped up the bag, my hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline. From the knowledge that this was it. No more second chances. No more proving myself to people who didn't care to look beyond the surface. At the front door, I hesitated only once. Took a deep breath, the kind that fills your whole chest, makes you feel alive for the first time in years. And then I stepped outside. The air was cold, sharp against my skin, but it felt cleaner somehow. Fresher. I didn't have a plan. I barely had a place to go. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was never coming back. Looking back, the first signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. When I was about 9, I remember standing in the backyard holding a crumpled science fair ribbon, the kind that says participation in dull gold letters. I was proud. I had built a model of the solar system out of string, foam balls, and glue that stuck to my hands for 3 days. But when I showed it to my dad, he barely glanced at it. Derek got first place last year, he said, like he was reminding me of some immutable law of nature. Why can't you be more like him? At the time, I thought maybe I hadn't tried hard enough. That if I just worked a little harder, smiled a little bigger, maybe he'd see me. But the truth was simpler. No matter what I did, I was never Derek. It became a pattern. Every game Derek played, they were front row, faces painted, cheers deafening. When I joined the art club, Dad didn't even show up to the exhibit. Mom said he was busy, but somehow he was never too busy when Derek was around. And the mistakes? Oh, they stuck like tar. The time I scraped Dad's truck pulling into the driveway, grounded for a month. The time Derek dented the same truck doing donuts in the school parking lot? Boys will be boys, Dad said, laughing like it was some grand rite of passage. Even the small victories, ace tests, summer jobs, scholarship offers, vanished into thin air before they could leave my mouth. Meanwhile, Derek could lose a sock and they'd hang a banner for him. It wasn't hatred. That would have been easier. It was worse, it was indifference. Like I was a background character in a story I was supposed to be starring in. For a long time, I told myself it would change. That someday, somehow, I'd be good enough. That if I played my cards right, if I worked hard enough, there'd be a moment, one moment, where he'd look at me and say, "I'm proud of you." But as the years rolled on, the hope got thinner and thinner, stretched so tight it barely resembled hope at all. And the night he finally said it, "You're useless, unlike your brother," it felt almost merciful. Like he was freeing me from an illusion I should have abandoned years ago. It happened on a Sunday night, the kind that hung heavy in the air, full of that slow, sinking dread that comes before another long week. I had just gotten off a brutal double shift, hands blistered, shoes sticky with oil and dust, and all I wanted was a hot shower and silence. But as soon as I walked in the door, I knew I wouldn't get it. The living room was buzzing. Derek was there, of course, sitting in Dad's favorite chair like he owned it, laughing about some new opportunity that had fallen into his lap. Some flashy real estate scheme. No money down, big returns. The kind of thing that sounded too good to be true because it was. Mom was perched on the edge of the couch, nodding along like she was hearing the gospel. And Dad? He was beaming. Actually beaming. Like he couldn't be prouder. I tried to slip past unnoticed, but Dad caught me with that old hawk stare. "Where've you been?" he barked. "Work," I said, shifting my weight awkwardly. "Picked up an extra shift." Derek snorted under his breath, barely trying to hide it. I caught the smirk on his face, and something inside me twisted. Dad leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms. "Work," he repeated, dragging the word out like it was something dirty. "A real man makes something of himself. Not just clock in and out like a drone." I swallowed hard, tired to the bone, not wanting to do this. "Not tonight." "I'm doing what I have to do," I said quietly. Dad leaned forward. His voice sharpened. "You're doing the bare minimum. Meanwhile, your brother's out here chasing real success." Derek sat there, basking in the praise like a cat in a sunbeam. Something about the unfairness of it, the absolute audacity, broke through the numbness I'd carried for years. "Real success?" I said, my voice low. "Selling dreams to people who can't afford them?" The room went still. For a second, no one said anything. Not Mom. Not Derek. Not even Dad. And then Dad's face darkened, storm clouds gathering. He stood up, slow and deliberate, like a man ready to settle a score. Walked right up to me, so close I could see the gray at his temples, the creases around his mouth. He looked me dead in the eyes and said it. "You're useless," he said, his voice cold as stone. "Unlike your brother." And just like that, something inside me, something I'd been desperately holding together for years, snapped clean in half. But I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded once, turned around, and walked up the stairs without saying a word. The battle was over before it even began. Packing didn't take long. It was strange, how little of my life fit into a single duffel bag. A few shirts, a battered pair of jeans, a handful of essentials. I threw in an old notebook too, the one I used to sketch plans in, ideas I never thought I'd have time or permission to chase. Dreams I had buried so deep I forgot they existed. Downstairs, I could still hear the low hum of the TV. Derek's easy laughter. No one bothered to check on me. No one asked if I was okay. Maybe they assumed I'd cool off and come crawling back down to sit quietly at the dinner table, just like every other time. Maybe they didn't even notice I was packing to leave for good. When I slung the bag over my shoulder, I paused at the top of the staircase, looking down at them one last time. Mom, fidgeting with her necklace, eyes glazed over. Dad, reclining in his chair like a king surveying his kingdom. Derek, phone in hand, basking in the warmth of their approval. I thought about all the times I had wanted their love. Their pride. The birthdays forgotten. The report cards met with shrugs. The late-night shifts spent scraping pennies together so I could help with the bills, only to hear them praise Derek for being ambitious, when he spent his nights out drinking. I thought about how I'd wasted, so many years hoping for a seat at a table where I was never truly welcome. And for the first time, the anger wasn't loud. It was quiet. Heavy. Like a door clicking shut behind you. I took a deep breath, long and slow, feeling it fill my lungs, and stepped down the stairs, my boots thudding against the wood. I crossed the living room without a word. I could feel my father's eyes flick up for half a second, then back to the TV. Derek didn't even notice. Mom opened her mouth like she might say something. She didn't. At the door, I hesitated just long enough to pull my house key from my pocket. I set it carefully on the side table, the same table where birthday cards for Derek used to sit while mine were forgotten. The key landed with a soft metallic clink. The sound of finality. I walked outside. The door shut behind me with a whisper. The night air hit my face, crisp and cold. It smelled like wood smoke and wet asphalt, like freedom. For a minute, I stood there on the porch, staring out at the empty street, wondering where I would go. I didn't have much money. I didn't have a plan. But what I did have was something more valuable than either. I had myself. Finally. Finally, I had myself. I slung the bag higher onto my shoulder and started walking, each step carrying me further away from the house that was never really home. I didn't know where the road would take me. But wherever it was, it had to be better than this. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. The first few weeks were brutal. There's no other word for it. I slept on an old pull-out couch in a friend's studio apartment, crammed between a broken lamp and a mountain of laundry. Sometimes the couch didn't even pull out properly, and I'd end up half-sitting, half-lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if I'd made a mistake. The money I had scraped together barely covered gas and cheap groceries. I worked double shifts at a dingy auto shop during the day and cleaned offices at night. My hands cracked from the cold and grease, my back ached like I was twice my age, and there were nights I was too exhausted to eat. Nobody called. Nobody checked if I was alive. But somehow, that was freeing too. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I wasn't chasing approval that would never come. For the first time, every hour of work, every dollar earned, it was mine. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. One night, while cleaning a law office, I found a crumpled business card on the floor. Web design intern needed. A small startup, new, scrappy, desperate enough to take a chance on someone with zero formal training but a lot of nerve. I didn't know much about web design. But I remembered the nights I'd spent as a teenager tinkering with code, building websites no one ever saw. It was a tiny ember I thought had died a long time ago. That night, after I finished mopping, I went home and stayed up until sunrise teaching myself everything I could: HTML, CSS, Photoshop basics. I devoured tutorials, built fake websites for imaginary companies, made mistakes and learned fast. I didn't have fancy credentials, but I had something better. I had hunger. And hunger, it turns out, is a hell of a motivator. A month later, I showed up to that tiny startup with a binder full of work. They didn't even ask for references. They gave me a shot. It was unpaid at first. I cleaned offices at night, designed websites during the day, surviving on instant noodles and whatever free coffee I could swipe from the break room. I stopped counting the number of days I went without sleep. I stopped waiting for a call from my family that would never come. Instead, I built a portfolio. Then a reputation. Then a name. 6 months in, one of the startup's clients, a boutique clothing brand, offered me my first real freelance contract. Real money. Real respect. I started getting emails from other businesses. Word spread. The kid who never got a second glance at home was suddenly the one people wanted to work with. By the end of that first year, I wasn't sleeping on couches anymore. I had a small apartment, a steady roster of clients, and something else, something I had never had before: pride. Not the loud, boastful kind. The quiet, steady kind you carry inside your chest like a shield. They had called me useless. But without meaning to, they had done the one thing that no pep talk or family dinner or half-hearted apology could ever have done. They had made me unstoppable. It started small, the way all big things do. First, one of the brands I worked with posted about a website redesign. Tagged me. Thanked me publicly. Nothing huge. Just a short caption. Couldn't have done it without the incredible work of my name. Highly recommend. But in the world of small businesses, word travels fast. Over the next few weeks, my inbox filled with inquiries. Clients I used to dream of working with. Fashion lines, indie tech companies, even a musician on tour looking for a digital revamp. One client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. And then, almost by accident, an interview happened. A local business magazine ran a feature on young entrepreneurs under 25. And somehow, one of my clients dropped my name. Next thing I knew, a reporter was emailing me, asking if I'd be willing to share my story. I almost said no. The idea of putting my name, and my past, out there made my skin crawl. But then I thought about the last thing my father ever said to me. You're useless. And something inside me steeled. I sat down with the reporter and told the truth. Not the ugly, gory details. But enough, the years of feeling invisible, The decision to leave, the climb back up. I didn't say my family's name. I didn't need to. This was about me. Only me. The article dropped one Friday morning. My phone buzzed nonstop for 2 days. Old classmates, old coworkers, even some distant relatives I barely remembered, they all flooded my messages. Saw your article. So proud of you, man. You're killing it. And somewhere amid the noise was a number I hadn't seen in almost a year. Mom. The first text came around midnight. We saw the article. So proud of you. Come visit soon, okay? No mention of the years of silence. No acknowledgement of the last words they threw at me like knives. Just pride. Suddenly, after all this time, I was worth showing off. I didn't respond. Not right away. The next morning, another text came through. Dad says he always knew you'd make something of yourself. I stared at it for a long time. Because that was the thing, wasn't it? They didn't miss me. They missed the story. The bragging rights. The glow of success they never built but now desperately wanted to bask in. And as the days rolled on, the messages got more desperate. Your brother misses you too. We should do a family dinner. Come on, don't be like this. Family sticks together. You're not still mad, are you? Every buzz of my phone felt like a ghost trying to drag me back into a grave I'd already climbed out of. They hadn't changed. They just thought I had finally become something worthy of their attention. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't their son anymore. Not in any way that mattered. I had outgrown them. And there was no going back. At first, it was just texts and calls. Harmless. Pathetic, almost. But when I didn't answer, they started getting creative. My mom posted a photo of me on Facebook, the first photo of me she'd acknowledged publicly in years, with some caption like, "So proud of our brilliant son, making his dreams come true." Likes. Comments. Congratulations from people I barely knew. And then, a few days later, a post from my father. A grainy picture of him and Derek at a barbecue years ago. No mention of me at all. The caption read, "Family is everything. Always support your brothers." It wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. It was a jab, a public, smiling jab, pretending everything was fine, pretending they hadn't kicked me out of their lives like yesterday's trash. Then the private messages started. "You're being childish. We're still your family, no matter what. Don't punish your mother like this. Your brother wants to make amends." It was like they thought if they said family enough times, it would erase everything they'd done. But family isn't just blood. It's loyalty. It's respect. It's standing up for someone when the rest of the world looks away. And they had failed every single test. One night, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Dad. "This isn't who you are. Come home, son. Let's start over." I sat there staring at the screen, the words blurring together. He had called me useless. Told me I wasn't even worth standing next to my brother. And now he wanted to start over, like it was a board game he could reset after losing a few moves. For a brief moment, I almost typed a reply. Almost. But then I remembered every late night staring at my cracked ceiling, wondering why I was never enough. I remembered scraping together coins for dinner, while they poured everything they had into Derek's dreams. I remembered sitting in the passenger seat of my own life, waiting for permission to drive. No more. So I typed 3 words. Simple. Final. "You have no son." And I hit send. Blocked the numbers. Muted the names. Deleted the posts without a second glance. That was the last door they would ever try to kick down. And it was locked. Bolted. Bricked over. They weren't coming back. Not into my life. Not into the world I had built with my own 2 hands. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. At first, it was strange. The silence. I kept expecting another call, another message, another jab wrapped in false concern. But after that final text, "You have no son," everything stopped. For the first time in my life, I could hear myself think without someone else's voice echoing in my head. No more second-guessing every decision. No more shrinking into the background, afraid of being noticed only to be torn apart. The quiet was unnerving at first. Like stepping into a room after a fire's been put out, everything still, everything raw. But then, slowly, the quiet turned into something else. Something better. Freedom. I spent my mornings actually tasting my coffee instead of choking it down before a 12-hour shift. I took long walks in neighborhoods I used to only drive through on my way to work, feeling the sun on my skin like it was something I hadn't earned before. I started saying yes to things I never would have dared to before. Networking events. New projects. Trips out of town just for the hell of it. Without the weight of their judgment, life expanded in ways I hadn't even known were possible. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. I made friends, not the kind you cling to out of loneliness, but real ones. People who saw me for who I was, not who I failed to be. I reconnected with old hobbies, picking up a paintbrush for the first time in years, sketching designs that had lived in my head but never had the space to breathe. I started lifting weights again, running miles along the river at sunrise, pushing my body not because I hated it, but because I respected it for carrying me this far. And the work? It exploded. I went from barely getting by to booking projects 3, 4, even 6 months out. I raised my rates, then raised them again, and people still lined up. Not because of some family name. Not because of anyone pulling strings behind the scenes. Because I was good. Because I had built something worth noticing. The name they had tried to erase, the kid they called useless, was starting to mean something. And it had absolutely nothing to do with them. The best part? I didn't even think about them anymore. Not really. Not with anger, not with sadness, not even with resentment. They had become what they had always treated me as. Strangers. And the life I was building? It wasn't for them. It wasn't for revenge. It was for me. Every laugh, every sunrise, every moment of pride was mine and mine alone. It happened on a random Tuesday. I was leaving a meeting downtown, portfolio tucked under my arm, when I saw him. My father. Standing outside a coffee shop, aging in ways I hadn't expected. His shoulders slumped, his face more hollow than I remembered. For a split second, he saw me too. Our eyes met. A flicker of something crossed his face, recognition, then something softer. Regret, maybe? He opened his mouth, half raising a hand like he was going to call out. I didn't stop. I gave a small nod, nothing more, and walked past him without breaking stride. Because the thing is, I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure. I already had everything I needed. And he was just a man on a sidewalk now. Nothing more.